Good evening. Can everybody hear me? I will project. Good evening. My name is Thijs van Massakers. I'm on the City and Regional Planning faculty here at Ohio State, and it is my honor tonight to introduce our Baumer speaker, the Planning Director for the City of Greensboro and current President of the American Planning Association, Sue Schwartz. The Baumer Series is Knowlton's platform to bring in renowned speakers from the disciplines housed here from both academia and practice. We've been fortunate to host prominent planners like Peter Calthorpe and Gil Penalosa, as well as well-known academics like Lance Freeman and Emily Tallon. I look forward to tonight's lecture to contribute to that legacy of vibrant conversations here at the intersection of the scholarship and practice of planning. Sue Schwartz is undeniably one of the leading voices in planning practice in the United States today, in part, but not only, because she is the current president of our premier professional organization, the American Planning Association. It is perhaps no surprise that she finds herself here during her tenure as president, since the APA has deep ties to OSU. For those of you not familiar with the history of APA, it was created through a merger between the American Institute of Planners, or AIP, and the American Society of Planning Officials, or ASPO, at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in New Orleans in 1978. That merger had been meticulously prepared by the leaders of AIP and ASPO, so much so that in the summer of 1975, those two leaders vacationed together. To me, it says something about the personal commitment to their professions shared by many planners that the folks in charge of managing this complex transition, which was controversial at the time, decided to go on vacation together. I do wonder how their families felt. In her remarks tonight, President Schwartz will share with us her views on planners' roles and strategies in dealing with transitions, and I'm curious if those will include vacationing. Anyway, in the case of ASPO, the relevant leader was Executive Director Israel Stolman, who became APA's first Executive Director upon the merger. Israel Stolman, for those of you that don't know, was a founding faculty member of City and Regional Planning program here at Ohio State. He was on the faculty from 1957 to 1968. And the first director of our program. So in that sense, he was the predecessor to later section heads like Professor Cleet, Professor Conroy, and Professor Clark. We honor that legacy to this day by awarding one student each year with the Stolman Award. In addition to currently leading APA, tonight's speaker, Sue Schwartz, has also led our field's professional certification body between 2005 and 2007, the American Institute of Certified Planners, attesting to her long-standing and deep commitment to the profession. I would be remiss if I did not point out that Israel Stolman was also in the inaugural class of the Fellows of the American Institute of Certified Planners, which he was inducted into in 1999. This honor he shares with my current colleague, Kyle Ezell, and former colleagues like Ken Perlman, to name a few. Stolman's own education, by the way, included a master's in city planning from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, a detail that my colleague, Harley Etienne, would want me to make sure that I include. In short, Sue's presence here is hopefully a bit of a homecoming for her, given these deep and enduring ties between planning at Ohio State and the planning profession more broadly, despite her Pennsylvania roots and education at the University of Pittsburgh and UNC Charlotte. Given her devotion to Philadelphia Eagles and Philadelphia sports more broadly, I think we should all be lucky that she did not go to Penn State, because that would have made these introductory remarks much more awkward. So in addition to her remarkable track record as a leader in our profession and her education at Pitt and UNC Charlotte, I would be remiss if I did not touch on her almost 4 decades of service to the city of Greensboro, North Carolina. She was involved there all the way from the neighborhood level with her work on South Side, creating an infill traditional neighborhood development plan that won awards from both the US EPA and the Sierra Club. She led the adoption of a citywide ordinance to facilitate T&D across the city of Greensboro, and she led the development of Greensboro's comprehensive plan, GSO 2040, which was adopted in 2020 and won the APA's National Award for Best Comprehensive Plan in 2022. So for the students in my community engagement class, which I just taught, I'll point out that for that comprehensive planning effort, more than 6,500 comments were collected as part of the participatory component. It included a day-long fair, numerous open houses, community meetings, and pop-up events at farmers markets, the National Folk Festival, and the Juneteenth celebration. The online engagement component for that comprehensive planning process included a comment writing contest to GSO with love in the run-up to Valentine's Day. In other words, we are not only hosting a national leader tonight, but also someone with a track record of lifelong commitment to a place, in this case Greensboro, and a proven willingness and ability to make that place better in innovative, creative, and dare I say, loving ways. Please join me in welcoming Sue Schwartz to Ohio State.
Okay, there we go. Thank you very much. Sometimes when I hear my bio being read, I think, wow, they're really cool. I wonder who they are. Because it surely can't be me. After all, I just finished grad school, I swear. That's what's in my head. Thank you very much. And I had forgotten, actually, about I knew Is Stolman, and I forgot about his connection to Ohio State, so I am more than honored to be here and represent in that time. I'm thrilled to talk to you. You're the students. You are moving your way through to this profession, and the future of our profession is in your hands. No pressure. You're going to do great. It's going to be awesome. As you continue to navigate your studies and your early career, today I'd like to share some advice, things I would have told my younger self. I've been a planner for 4 decades, but I am an accidental planner. And see, talking with Kyle today, he's an accidental planner. Talking with Cardo, he's an accidental planner. We don't always start out, I want to be a city planner. How many of you knew what city planners were when you were in elementary school? Not a single hand has gone up. My point well taken. But planning is a process, and it finds you. I started out at the University of Pittsburgh. I was a geology major. As a child of the 70s, Earth Day, Save the Planet, the ecology movement, geology. It was going to be awesome. Probably not the wisest choice with somebody with learning challenges like I have, but 1 semester of chemistry, calculus, physics, geology, and English kind of convinced me that maybe this wasn't the path for me. Thank God for geology and English, because therefore I did not flunk out. But I moved on and I found geography. Geo, words sound similar, and actually I really got into what that was turning into. I really liked it, and then I had to take an urban geography class, and it was like, who knew the city was this living, breathing organism? That was the whole essence of the class, and I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. And I was going to school in one of the greatest industrial cities in the United States. There was so much to learn, and so I picked up a double major in urban studies at that time. And I'm sorry, I'm going to take these off because apparently the glare is not letting me read. So this is the downside, how you can tell I'm 4 decades in planning. So moving forward, but that's kind of like one of my first lessons. Be open. I remember in my senior year of high school, I went to 12 years of Catholic school. Yes, I'm still in recovery, but they say you need to have a 5-year plan. You need to know where you're going. You need to be able to plan all this out. And I know people that did that and did it well, but that didn't work for me. Because I was open, I found this profession. I found this activity. I found this working with people, but also you have to be attuned to the natural environment as well. And how does this work together? So being open and to the unexpected, being willing to shift and discover. So there are unexpected opportunities. And I mentioned before I had learning challenges, but 60 years ago, we didn't call them that. We just figured I was a little slow. I have 3 older brothers, so my dad explained it like she just doesn't learn like her brothers do. Maybe it was a girl thing. But I thought it was, I didn't flunk, but I kept up, but just barely. And I kind of managed through. Now, I'm going to flash forward a second. When I was in my mid-30s, both my parents had passed away of cancer, and I was helping my brothers clean out their house, and I found a letter from my guidance counselor. And it was to my parents, and I'll never forget what it said. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Schwartz, We understand Susanna will be applying for college this fall. We don't think you should encourage her. We don't think she will be successful, or if she is, we don't think she will finish. I had no idea this letter had existed. The greatest gift my parents ever gave me was not telling me about it and letting me go and see what I could do. I stand before you with both a bachelor's and master's degree. When I was in college, how it changed and flipped for me when I was at Pitt, one of my professors kind of noticed how I took notes and a few other things and suggested that I go visit a friend of his in the education department where they were studying a new field called learning preferences. I will tell you, my father, an ex-Marine, told me what he thought about learning preferences. You prefer to learn and pass and get a job. That's your preference. But it was life-changing. Now, I did not go from barely getting by to being a Rhodes Scholar, but I did go from just barely getting through, and the goal was to just get finished, to actually learning and understanding and applying what I had gotten. And it was life-changing, but it also was a lifelong lesson in how to learn and to be open. And then they always keep learning. Now, I'm sorry guys, I know you're finishing up masters and bachelors, and I'm telling you it's not over when you get the degree. My dad, also the font of wisdom in our family, told me once, he said, what I like about you, kid, is you're just barely above average. That did not prompt a laugh. Come on now. And you know, it might not be he goes, what I like is you'll never be a know-it-all. You'll know you always have to learn about stuff. And he was kind of right. As much as that hurt when you're 20 to have your dad tell you, like, yeah, you're here. I find that philosophy very engaging, but it's also about discovery and being curious about what else is out there. So part of what you're doing here is setting yourself up for the rest of your life, learning and being curious, whether it's the new technique in engagement, or a newest set of analysis, or just a different city that you're going to visit and just seeing what's going on there and being open to the lessons that they have for you. So we all have challenges. I don't tell you this like, hey, look at me. It's more of, look, this is when I hear my introductions, I kind of choke a little bit because that's not what was expected of me. And maybe things weren't expected for you either. But you work and you find something you love, and it's amazing what happens and where the energy and the juice comes from. I will tell you that one of the things that happens, what the challenge that you have, whether it's personal or professional, we need to keep moving forward with those challenges, but this is where you learn to lean in to your community. Now look at your community already. Look at how big this room is. This is your OSU planning community, and I'm sure there's more, but there's also a bigger community. At one of my very first APA national conferences, there was sort of a session for if you've never been to a national conference before. And I'll never forget the presentation because one of the national leaders said, I want to welcome you because you are now part of a community of planners. I really love that statement. We're not alone. We might be misunderstood out in the professional world a lot, but we're not alone. We have each other. The other part of that is one of the reasons I wanted to run and be APA president is I wanted to remind us of that no matter what's going on, that we do have each other. We do have this institution of APA. We do have people and an organized institution to rely on. My community helped me a lot throughout my career. When both my parents had cancer and they had it at the same time. You know, it was just like, come on, God, what are you doing? But, you know, you get through. I had friends that checked in on me because there's something about fellow planners who understand what else you're dealing with that were very helpful to be a part of it. And that's the other part of that lesson. And I'll share that second piece in a little bit. But I also, when I first became planning director, yay, I became planning director 14 years ago, it was great, except I had a couple of people who weren't happy about it, so they started planning stories in the newspaper, and it was really bad. I mean, I was looking at, I talked talked to a labor attorney because I wasn't sure what the heck was going to happen next. But it was my network of planners, my community, people who had been through it before, people who understood different options they had that really, and then checked up on me just to make sure I was okay. And I'm still a planning director, so obviously it worked. No, I didn't. I literally was that so bad. I woke up and there was a headline, Schwartz to be reassigned, except they didn't have the right picture. There's a woman in Greensboro, her name is Susan Howard Schwartz, and they had her, she's a head of a foundation, she's very wealthy, and they had her picture in there. It was great. So actually she sent me a very lovely note that say, I am so sorry you're going through this, and hopefully things will turn out better. I have to chuckle now, but it wasn't so funny at the time. So, yeah, there will be tough times. It's just, it happens. Nobody escapes them, whether it's personal or professional. So leaning on your network, but also learning to treasure those unexpected discoveries of grace when they happen. When my parents were sick, and I will tell you I was in my mid-30s, and I will tell you this was the hardest lesson for me to learn. People that I thought I could count on, people I thought that would always be my side, there were a bunch of them that, nope, they were very uncomfortable. It's not what they do. And it was hurtful and disappointing, to be honest. But then there were people who I barely knew, or some I didn't know at all, that all of a sudden extended the right thought. Came into my office one day, someone had cut daffodils from their garden and had them on my desk. It was just, you can be upset about things or the non-support, or you can focus on and be grateful for the grace that gets extended to you. And I guarantee you, those moments of grace are out there. One of my favorite phrases, though, is a little reminder about this, because we all face tough times, is bend, but don't break. Sometimes you just have to bend into it a little bit when things are tough, but don't let it break you. Imagine it, visualize it, bounce back, and you can. And the other part of this lesson is you can only control how you react to the jerks. Because yes, there are jerks out there. There's going to be a developer who's going to cuss you out in front of other people, a council member who may not be as enlightened to the value of planning as perhaps you would like them to be, or a few other things like that. You control how you react to them. You don't want to be a meme. Oh yes, there's a meme. Again, no laughter. You guys are killing me here. This is the longest I've gone. Well, you see at the bottom, we were talking about Jane Jacobs. So see, Jane's making an appearance on the bottom there. She's actually a good meme, I would say. Like when your city manager, does anybody see Planning Peeps on Facebook? Yeah, that's where some of these are coming from. So now you have an amazing network at OSU, but I'm going to ask you to expand it. I first got involved in APA at the chapter level, and it was very simple. My first planning job was the Western Piedmont Council of Governments in Hickory, North Carolina. How many of you heard of it? Nobody. Oh, one, two. Okay, two, thank you. It was a local assistance planner, and you had to know everything. You were the expert. So we subscribed to everything that APA and ULI had, so I read every single document, every single publication that came in, because I wanted to be. So APA as the resource to help expand my knowledge of my career was important. But how I got involved in APA was we were doing some pretty unusual things that I thought needed attention for the rest of the state, and didn't understand why our state newsletter wasn't covering anything. So being annoyed, I started writing articles about it and sending it in. That's literally how I got started. So 1983, writing articles, 2025, APA president. I mean, it's a long journey, but you start somewhere that you're making a contribution as a member towards your organization. Now, one of the things I'm going to see, how many of you are members of APA? Hands up. Okay, not a lot. Here we go. How many of you are students? guess what? Planning.org, your membership is free while you're a student. It's free. Did I hear you? Can I say that one more time? It is free. Those resources are free to you. It is where you can get involved. It's where even if you're not involved, you just want to read what's going on and get the weekly publication and interact, or get our weekly information about what's going on in Washington, or just peruse the research section. So I will just put a little bug in your ear that we have one of the best reports that comes out every January, the Trends Report. Our research staff do an amazing job looking at global trends, looking at trends across the United States, and breaking it down into manageable nuggets. That's part of being that network. So how many of you are going to go to planning.org and sign up? Do I see some hands? I'm going to be busting on your professors to make sure they follow up on that, because it's free. Get it? Free. How many times? I mean, it's not free and then you sign up and you get, it's not like those things on Facebook where it says free and you sign up and then you discover your PayPal account has like $39 a month being hit to it. It's not that at all. Much better than that. So the second part of this is while you're going, is don't put off your certification. I didn't have a choice. My second boss, a man named Bill McNeil, just told me I was taking the exam, that all of his planners were going to have AICP. And if he hadn't done that, I probably would have doubted myself and said, well, I didn't go to planning school. I have a master's in geography. I don't know. But it also started, but I passed. Okay, here's another secret. There's a certain score you need to pass. I want to say it's 55. I got a 55. And I felt really bad about it. I thought, oh, maybe. To which my now husband said, they don't give you extra letters for higher scores. You're a certified planner. And oh, by the way, you can take that exam soon after you graduate. So you take it while you're still accustomed to taking tests, and then as you get the experience, you apply for full certification. That One Path program started about a year ago, and we've seen amazing increases. So there's two things to put into your schedule while you're planning ahead. Join APA, take the exam as soon as you can after you graduate. So that certification in North Carolina, because UNC is there and the UNC program, was pretty important. And because I had it, I was actually in line for other jobs, even if I didn't have that master's in planning. But it was a level playing field. It's something that is moved on with. There's one more. So this is the One Path I was talking about, and the apply, take the exam, and then when you get fulfill the educational professional experience. But that last part, little box on the bottom, the AICP Code of Ethics, becomes very important, because one of the things you do when you say sign up, take the exam, you basically give your word. You sign your word that you are going to adhere by the professional code of ethics. And I'm not going to go into the different, there's a code of behavior and then there's aspirational goals in the code. But it's become really important during these times. We've had people write opinions on LinkedIn, on listservs, on a few other places, saying that if a planner follows any of the administration edicts, for example, my city and our Housing and Neighborhood Development Department was ordered by HUD to scrub the website of any DEI language. Now, it's there, it's just not there in the way it used to be. But we scrubbed it. Why? Because we get $3.6 million every year, and we work on affordable housing and other issues. But there are people that give opinions that say if you do that, then you are violating the code of ethics. Here's the deal. When it comes to the code of ethics, there's only one body that can determine what is a violation of the code of ethics, and that is the AICP Commission, the American Institute of Certified Planners. And they also have an ethics officer. His name is Ralph Wilmer. And he has been writing advisory pieces and posting them online as people try to navigate some of the things they're being asked to do under this new administration. So if I had a crystal ball, but I don't, even though I'm a planner, I should be able to see in the future. Our communities are depending on us. I know this is a very unsettling period of time. And for some of us, it is personally unsettling. But our communities, that's where your superpower comes in. That's where being a planner comes in. Whether it's planners having to plan communities after natural disasters, like the western part of North Carolina, which, by the way, got their funding eliminated by the administration, just saying. That's unsettling, so what do you do now? But our communities, we can wallow in this, we can be angry about it, that's fine. But we still have to put our best professional efforts forward, and we still have to work with our communities for the future that they want and need. So, I am here. I fell, we talked about accidental planning, being an accidental planner. One of the reasons I'm here is because during a time, I honestly at one point said, well, I'll get a job in planning and hang out there for a while, because all the funding was cut in the 80s for environmental programs. You might remember who the president was. Well, you don't remember, you would have to look in your history books to know who the president was in the 80s. And I thought, well, surely they'll come back. They didn't come back till Obama, so it's a good thing I fell in love with planning. I fell hopelessly in love with what we do and who we are as a profession. We can do such amazing things for our communities and with our communities. And so I didn't find a job or a profession. I found my vocation. It's part of who I am. It's what I live and breathe. It's what I do. And there's something about that gives you energy, creativity, makes you curious to find what else is going on out there. And I hope for you, that's what I hope you find, whether it's transportation planning or figuring out the new GIS system that you need to pull data together to give people data-informed decision-making a chance. That's what I want for you, because that will serve you throughout your career. So find something that you feel passionate about. In this profession, you have to put a lot of pieces together. You have to integrate things. You have to even integrate things from those engineers. Sorry, I had to do it, Ricardo. The engineers or the landscape architects or the architects. Our job, I heard us called one time, we're the profession of weavers. We weave together information and information from the other professions to make it make sense for our communities. I love it because I'm never bored. I love this profession. Sometimes I wish I was bored, because sometimes it can get a little too crazy, but I love it because I've never done the same thing twice. There's always something different going on in my city. There's always something else that makes it happen. Now, yeah, there's a lot of personal satisfaction, but the bigger win is for your community. So it's part of who I am. I chose to do this. Oops, I probably went one too far, too many. Because I believe in what we do. I really believe in the difference that we make. And the power, you heard me right, it's a power of what we do. One of the reasons I also ran is because throughout my career, I've heard sort of planners described as the shy profession. We're kind of meek. Our job is to make everybody else look good. If I do my job well, my city manager and my mayor are taking a bow. That is success. So what's the planner do? I don't build things like the engineers do and build a bridge or make a road better. I may help influence where the road goes to make things better for better development. But those kinds of things, they don't get the same kind of level of highlight. But I'm telling you to lean into this power that we have and believe in it, because if we don't celebrate who we are and what we do, no one else is going to throw us a ticker tape parade. It's not happening. But we can do it for ourselves. Now, I'm not talking about our power. Actually, there's one picture. Where is the question was about the comp plan. That part, you see the basket, the picture with the basket in it? That basket, that was at the National Folk Festival where we launched our comprehensive plan. we figured we would have, the Friday night of the Folk Festival is more local. So we just asked people 3 basic questions. What do you love about Greensboro? What do you wish was different? What's your vision for the future? And you see that globe in the middle. It's, yes, we were Plan It Greensboro. Sorry, I stole it off of probably a million grad students' t-shirts I saw over the years. But it gave us instead of going, we had Plan It GSO, and instead of saying, we're here to talk about the city's new comprehensive plan, a vision for the future in 35 years, which people will be asleep halfway through that, we had a tagline. I wish I could tell you I thought of branding, but it just came to me, I wasn't that clever. But it stuck, and so it made it easier. We got more media play and everything else. The lower one is, we have a downtown greenway that's 4.5 miles that goes around our downtown. They have the Run on the Greenway, so we were out there providing drinks and getting input like that. And that was me at the national conference. Yes, I wore my Eagles jersey because we won. And I was president. It was also my birthday, so I figured all those things came together. I got to pick what I do. Actually, I did get several people, and that's staff that came from Greensboro for the opening ceremony, including my boss, the handsome gentleman with the beard on the back row. That is Trey Davis, my city manager, who came out. He could only spend 24 hours, but he wanted to show support for his planning director and that what he believes in the power of planning. And so we've treated him very well. He got lots of goodies for coming out, but they do exist, those city managers who believe in what we're doing. So, dig into your strength, build it. What is your strength? Maybe the facilitation and engagement arena, you really shine. Getting people to talk, getting people to open up. Build on it. Teach others how to do it. Share it. Be a leader. That's the next thing we're going to talk to you about. Now, not everybody can be the APA president, but you can lead from within. You can lead your class, your community that you're working for, your neighborhood, maybe once you move into the neighborhood you're going to live in for a while. But leadership, it's hard. I mean, it's not a simple thing. I can't just go be that. And it's not a collection of traits, but it's rather how you use those traits. Leadership is having the courage to stand up. And in these days, that's going to take a lot of courage because there's a lot of perceived consequences out there. But courage is not the absence of fear. It's moving ahead of it, getting beyond it. My feet quake in my boots just as much as the next person. I was very flattered. I posted this announcement on LinkedIn, and someone very sweetly said, "Sue Schwartz, our fearless leader." I went, "Well, thank you. That's nice, but no, that would not be true. You know, you mess this up, people don't hear. You know, people are talking, or you offend the wrong group." And you may have done a lot of work. So I want to always try to make sure I'm saying it right, and I'm being thoughtful and hopefully connecting. It's about being, and you never know when those opportunities arise, I should say. It is about being secure enough to listen to a cross-section of ideas, even those that are very different of your own. Leadership is having the wisdom to solicit help from others whose traits may be stronger. It is having humility to accept other ideas that may be better or seeing flaws in your own ideas. It exemplifies transparency throughout an organization. These all matter. But it's how you use them that makes you an effective leader. So I'll have to show a picture. This is our board and commission at the national conference. These folks give a lot of time on your behalf. They're from all over the country, and they want to make sure that our organization is strong so that you have resources and that you want to be a part of it. Now, I'm not a presidential scholar. When we talk about leadership, I have to bring this up. But I have really come to admire Theodore Roosevelt. I first saw this quote in a Nike ad about 20 years ago, not presidential scholar, see? And then I went and read the whole thing. And yes, I'm going to read this to you because I think it's really important to get into your heart a little bit. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who knows, at best knows, in the end, the triumph of high achievement, and at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. I found this on my chair in my office when I thought I was going to be fired. And it's been kind of hung out with me ever since. It takes a lot of guts to do what we do. Hang in there. When you look at Teddy Roosevelt, he was just himself. I mean, they talk about being authentic these days. That man was himself. He just had this incredible belief in this country and how it could be better. He had experienced tremendous personal tragedy and tremendous political tragedy, but it did not stop him from that belief that everyone could contribute to our greatness. I think that's the kind of leadership, that's what I try to live by. Okay, this is probably my pet peeve, so if I sound like your mom, I am a mom, I didn't mean to put that out there, but sometimes when I talk emphatically, I'm informed that's my mom voice that comes out, so forgive me in advance. Being an effective communicator, you have to be effective at this. This means you need to work with your staff, your colleagues, your supervisors, elected, and the community, and communication skills have got to be spot on. People have to understand what we are talking about the why they should care and why we care. Communicating and telling our community's stories is also important. When we're speaking with elected leaders especially. Over the years, I have embraced advocacy in Washington. I've learned that our elected leaders want to know what's happening on the ground, and they ask not for data, they ask for stories. And advocacy, so that being open thing, that theme, I'll say it again, I thought advocacy was something other people did, like if you went to Washington, you know, in those movies, the person who's the lobbyists, they're very sharply dressed and they know how to wheel and deal, and that's not, maybe that happens somewhere, but really what I discovered, it really is more about people. My thinking changed during 9/11. I was a member of the AICP Commission and we were supposed to have our fall leadership meetings in Washington, and we kept them 2 weeks after 9/11 and flights were restored. We were the only ones in town. So as we met with our elected officials and their staff, they were just thrilled we were there and really wanted to talk about what was going on in Greensboro or going on in the region that I'm from in North Carolina. And we had great conversations. They're humans. That's what I came away from it with. They are humans. We had the Planners Day on Capitol Hill back in June, and what we discovered is that everyone had amazing conversations on both sides of the aisle, because what they want to know about is how are things being impacted for their constituents. They have to win an election next year. They understand that. They want to know, yes, they want data, but they want to know the story about Mrs. Jones who couldn't afford her rent and why that happened and what were the stressors, or what was the program that was cut that would have helped her that they can help with in the future. You as a planner need to be advocating for your community, and you have powerful stories to tell. As planners, you see and hear a lot of different stories every day. Stories of people navigating change, stories of people of resilience, stories of communities shaping their future, and stories of why it takes a planner. You don't have to persuade the folks in Washington. You just need to give them really good reconnaissance, really good data, and you as the planner are the translator of all things of why this is important. You are the bridge between stories, data, communities, and people. You are why it takes a planner, and you are why we must take action. By working together, we can make a real difference, and we have a chance. This past June, the planners we heard, but it's also doing something scary. We also have an opportunity. The Road to Housing bill, which came out of the Senate Banking Committee with 100% unanimous bipartisan support. If Senator Elizabeth Warren and Senator Scott can hug, and it wasn't just a photo op, we have a chance for the first time in 35 years for meaningful change in housing legislation. We're almost there. Thank you. I would love to tell you that I did that, but no. It was a lot of, these conversations have just methodically been going on. Housing is a bipartisan issue. Housing, looking at ways that we can change zoning reform. Zoning reform actually, who's in the zoning history class? Where did zoning come from in most of our states? A good bit of it came from the federal government, model housing zoning legislation, which actually was kind of redlining, wasn't great. Color of Law, who's read it? One of the most important books I think I've read in my career. Very important to understand the why our communities have some of the shape that they do. But we have this opportunity, and it's also an opportunity to capitalize on the moment of talking about housing and talking about my boss that I pointed out to, Trey Davis, we have a housing gap. We've had tremendous success in economic development, which we needed because we were in a pretty bad deficit. But all of a sudden, we have about 10,000 jobs coming to Greensboro over the next 3 to 5 years. That might not sound like a lot. To me, it scares the crap out of me that that's going to happen. Where are these people going to live? Housing is where jobs go to sleep at night. So we have all these jobs. There's some absorption within the existing city, and they aren't all coming to Greensboro to live. They may live in other places, but we can't count on that. So how do we accelerate housing supply? Housing Supply Accelerated, you might ask, is a playbook that was brought together with work between American Planning Association, National League of Cities, Bankers Association, the Mortgage Bankers Association, the National Home Builders, and the National Association of Realtors. When did those people all start playing together? That's kind of like, normally we're kind of at each other's throats, maybe not as the National League of Cities, but we published a playbook, which is on, wait for it, planning.org. If you're, it's not even have to be a member to pull that down and look at that information. It's great information about what different cities are doing to address housing shortages and increase supply. It's not all about zoning either. I probably get a little testy when I hear, well, if we just make the process a little easier and shorter, that would take care of everything. That is a piece of it, to be sure, and some of our colleagues have done not a disservice. You read some of the zoning ordinances from some communities, and it takes a year. Greensboro takes 6 weeks to get through our process, unless there is an appeal. Then it takes another 3 weeks after that. But some of the things and some of the requirements in zoning ordinances are just modern day redlining. I said that out loud. A lot of things that add to the cost of housing and reduce the supply. But this accelerator project talks about that. So we are actually, the next phase, as we move into the next part of this, literally I'm spending the week in DC as we talk through with different House members and Senate members about how we can move forward with some of the legislation, but also things about banking, because the banking rules were changed after during the Great Recession, and they haven't let up. They are part of the stranglehold of why it's hard to get mortgage money, not just mortgage money, but development money to fund development projects. My developers tell me they used to be able to get 90% of their projects financed. They can get 50% now, which means they have to go to all these other places, which adds to the cost, which adds to the time, which adds to the shortage of supply. So there's great things coming. See, don't you think it's cool we have these kind of powers? Oh, by the way, can I tell you the secret of talking to the senators and congressmen and their offices about the Road to Housing Act? I went in, I would love to tell you again, I just thought this up, but it just occurred to me as I saw these very young people, of which I am old enough to be their, if not their mother, possibly their grandmother, and they're very earnest. And I said, I'm just curious, where do you live? When the chief of staff of one of the senators lives in a house with 6 other guys on the edge of DC because that's what they can afford, you don't have to explain anything. He understands and has helped us with that senator on getting their support. He co-sponsored the legislation because they get it. If their staff can't find a place to live, that was the extreme example. The rest of them all had. One was way out in, I just went blank on the name, the end of the line of the metro, and it's in West Virginia. It's a 2-hour trip each way. And Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, a very famous place in West Virginia. So part of this is learning to listen to what's going on and apply and help. The part where I say we translate things for people, that's part of what we're talking about. So, oh, yeah. Like this, I'm being recorded, yay, and had to talk for 45 minutes. But I will tell you, let's see if it's on there. Oops, wrong way. I think Kyle flattered me when he said he makes his students watch my TED Talk. When I was asked to do the TED Talk, at a point in my career, I first was like, wait a minute. First of all, here's your secret. You have no PowerPoints. You have no notes. You have 18 minutes and 18 minutes only, not 19 minutes, not 18 minutes, 30 seconds. You have 18 minutes. And it's recorded and it goes into a larger bank of videos. So if you screw up, it's in posterity, it's there. So I was like, yeah, this is great. I'll do that. It'll be awesome. But it turned out okay, I think. I'm pretty well. I'm glad I did it. I met some very cool friends during this process. But at the point in my career, I probably could have got by with just coasting. If you don't do something that scares you, you're probably just coasting. And you learn and grow from it. And maybe I would have fallen on my face, but I would have learned something from it. So just a little motherly advice. Do something. Wait, there's more. I can't believe my mother did this to me. This is my kindergarten picture. My mother thought this was an adorable haircut for a 5-year-old. She did not understand. But sometimes you have to give it a try and fail. Hair does grow out sometimes if you pull it out or cut it yourself because you want to make it better when you're 5. But yeah, learning from those kinds of things that change. And yes, this APA stuff, I unfortunately shared this picture once, and they seem to work it into every single PowerPoint that I do from now on. But yeah, you gotta try something new. But I'm gonna talk a little about one last thing. Personal resilience. That's key. This is my friend, Mary Beth Jenke, who I met. We were in the same TED Talk cohort, so we had to hang out together and rehearse together, and she's just a great hero. That is her website, drmarybeth.com. She was a speaker at the keynote at the national conference. By the way, she was a former Secret Service agent. Can you tell by those guns? I mean, don't mess with her. When I interviewed Mary Beth prior to our national conference, we spoke about how to manage self-doubt, fear, and avoiding burnout. Here are a couple of her pieces of advice. First, prepare. The more you prepare, the more confident you can be in a situation. They rehearse a Secret Service agent's scenarios up to 100 times, so it's muscle memory. So everybody knows what everybody is doing. 2, practice self-care, real self-care. You need a toolbox of what that means to you, whether it's physical exercise, breathing exercises, meditation, or even just sharing a laugh, but it's important. To avoid burnout, we must deal with mitigating stress healthfully. I used to like beer when I was in college, probably that wasn't healthfully, but Mary Beth said makes planners adapt, is to what she wants us to do, what she advised us to do is to observe, not absorb. Observe and notice and pay attention, but don't absorb it, even when tension is going on. It's important to keep your perspective, and observing gives us a slight detachment of what we're doing. We're not aloof, we're just watching. Okay, as we wrap up, this is how I started. Embrace your superpower. I chose to do this, and I'll say it again because I believe in our power. You heard me, I'll say it one more time, our power and the value of what we do. We need to embrace our superpower, leading through change. Not too many other people, there's no other profession that says, oh yeah, we work people through changes, what's happening. Whether it's forced change we went to implement, or change that is forced upon us. So yeah, oh, by the way, this was at the national conference. You could have dressed up as a superpower. They gave me the cape, but I had too much in my suitcase, so I would have brought it for y'all. But translating, telling stories, connecting data to people, and planning. We have the knowledge, the expertise. We have the ability to navigate, negotiate, and communicate what's important for our communities. As planners, and I say this with emphasis, we are pillars of democracy. We bring people together to discuss and decide what needs to change and how we're going to go about it. That is fundamental to the democratic principles that we were founded on. And we are coming up on 250 years, the anniversary of this great experiment. This is an important part for you. We are not just a superpower, we are a proud and noble profession that contributes to the quality of life in this country. Dig it into your heart. No one's gonna tell you that, so you're gonna have to hear it from me, and believe me, and maybe watch this video when it comes back up again. So, they also put in the perfunctory, I'm an Eagles and Phillies fan. Yes, I have my own jersey done, and the Philly fanatic, I'm his girlfriend. He likes me the best. And I did get a Phillies jacket when our conference was in Philadelphia. But I will tell you a little something about being a Philadelphia fan that gives you a few pieces to live by. I am incredibly loyal. It took 50 dadgum years, there I said that different way, for the Eagles to win their first Super Bowl. And then they won a second one. But still was an Eagles fan, even when they were like 1-12. And Phillies, oh my goodness, you kind of always assume there's going to be a tragic ending, because there always is. But it doesn't mean I don't love, and actually the Phillies are playing right now, so I'm a little anxious to see how we're doing against the Mets, but I'm loyal. I stick with you thick and thin, and I will stick with you all through thick and thin, even after I'm APA president. But it also gives me a great sense of optimism, because maybe next season, next year is our year. I was lucky. This year was my Eagles year, so I get to celebrate for 365 days that we actually pays off for that optimism. But it's important that we have that as part of how we move forward with our communities. So, what's going on with APA? And I know we only have a few more minutes. So, what's going on? I can't ignore what's going on in Washington. This is my last part. So, with all the things that are happening, we are staying the course. We haven't changed our website. We haven't changed our programming. We are staying the course of who we are. We are helping our members in transition. So we have members that have lost their jobs with downsizing, with some of the DEI changes. So we have help either reduce dues or certification maintenance requirements being reduced to help them maintain community. We have a lot of resources available. There is, it's starting to get late. Resources online and information. There's a weekly newsletter about what's going on in Washington, what are some of the things to be aware of, whether it's new bills coming in, the spending bills that might change, those kind of things. But most importantly, the last piece where we've been listening. Since the national conference, we have held listening sessions, both at the national conference and online. We've had monthly for members to tell us how they're being impacted or how their communities are being impacted. And using that reconnaissance is we're developing more and more programs to help people navigate through this. It's tumultuous, more so because we just don't know. It's so uncertain, and it changes. It could be, we think we're planning for one change in the administration and then it becomes this change. So being prepared and being helpful. So I'm not going to ignore that things are chaotic, and there's certainly more ahead. So what do? We do what planners do. We play the cards we're dealt. We figure out how to make that work. We focus on protecting our communities. We focus on finding ways to strengthen our communities. We focus on communicating with our lawmakers about their impacts. This is why you join APA, to have a professional community. I'll just one more time put a plug for those of you that didn't raise your hand for joining APA. That costs you nothing. Did I say that? But it comes back to this point. Yeah, what we're looking ahead is uncertain, probably the most uncertain I've seen in my lifetime. There's actually probably opportunities in this, opportunities that are moving ahead. There may be chances to really strengthen communities, really move forward with some initiatives like the housing initiative. All of a sudden, people want to talk to us because they want to know how to deal with housing and deal with all aspects of housing and not just zoning and zoning reform. So, you are the future of this profession. Sorry, I'm leaving a bit of a mess at the moment. I'll try to clean up a little bit more. I have another 18 months of this term. But you got this. You're one of the finest programs in the country. I know, I've used to be on the Planning Accreditation Board. I know these things. You will come out of here with skills and an understanding that will serve your communities, your state, federal government, yourselves very well. So I look forward to meeting you in the arena because that's where all the good stuff is, and you're going to do great. Thank you for having me. Oh, I see one. Pardon? Can you hear me? Oh, I heard Greensboro and dedicate. So. How did you dedicate yourself to Greensboro and what's inspiring? Oh, how did I dedicate? Okay, well, there's some practical reasons for this. I got married. And my husband is also a planner, so to find two planning jobs in a similar orbit, he worked for High Point, now he works for the city of Winston-Salem. Part of it was practical and not wanting to move around, but two, I worked for a long time in redevelopment and working in low wealth communities and reinvestment corridors and areas, and that's just so fascinating. And the more success, I just wanted to keep doing more and more because success just was addictive. I never saw myself as a planning director, but other people did and suggested I get over myself and start applying for such things. And I'm really glad I did because, again, my job is, I think I didn't work in code, I didn't work in zoning, And that traditionally is where planning directors kind of come from, but I think that's been my strength because I'm a great facilitator. So I end up asking developers, like, what's the outcome you want? Let's figure out how we can get there, not arguing over the nuance of the ordinance and that kind of thing. So I think partly practicality of my living situation, two, I really was loving what I was doing and I had a great deal of freedom when I was a redevelopment planner. And three, and then when I became a director, it's just, I can't believe it's been 14 years. So that's my story, how I stayed there. Anything else? I see one way, way in the back. Yeah, there's nobody behind you. So how did APA grow my career? So one, I learned a lot. I mean, just all the different resources, but part of it when being either at the state level or then later at the national level, okay, I'm a planning nerd. Do I have any planning nerds in here? A few? Oh, come on, you guys are terrible. I'm too cool to be a planning nerd. No, because talking with other people that get it like you do, I mean, I learned about one of my friend, a very dear friend is the planning director of Champaign, Illinois, and he was telling me about, he came up with a neighborhood indicators project before neighborhood indicators were cool and very well known, and just, he was so excited and I thought, I could do that. I'm also competitive as hell, so if Bruce could do it, I could do it. But those kinds of things, those contacts, I don't believe, networking was a thing. I don't like that term because it feels artificial. I just like meeting other people and learning about what they're doing. So APA gave me a wider audience to meet. It was part of it. So, yes, sir.
So as a question, civic responsibility and for profession, I think organizing people is really, really important right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm curious what thoughts you might have on this. Is that it's really pretty hard to organize right now, or it's something, that there are pressures against organizing? So what thoughts do you have about how we might get people re-engaged with this civic responsibility?
So there's a lot packed in there. I mean, I think I forget who I was talking with, how difficult it is, for example, with ICE and a few other things in some of the neighborhoods we work in. Because if we have a community meeting, we might be subject to curiosity, perhaps, from those folks. So we know that people are not coming out. So how do you engage now? And that's where I'm counting on you guys to come up with ideas, because we might still have in-person community meetings, but we need to have other things too, so that can people pull together. I think the most important thing that we have to do, when I talked about communication and education, we can be bad at that. We can start talking in planner jargon and other things, but that's part of how you give power to your communities, is giving them information and how that goes together. I don't know too many planners that are actually the activists that organize this. Apparently, I'm messing with the janitor right now. But I think working in tandem, creating those information, being very clear about what this means to them, I think those are very important components of organizing and empowering communities. So, you're going to keep me on the hot seat, aren't you? So, yes, ma'am.
I was going to ask you, kind of controversial discussion. What do you see the role of citizen planning and advocacy groups like Strong Towns movement? How do you see that as impacting the work of the APA?
So, like Strong Towns, I think those guys are amazing advocates, and I appreciate the in-depth education. One of the best things I do is not just, I think the best thing we can do is learn from everyone. And so the Strongtown folks we've had, and I just went blank on their names, and I used to have them on the tip of my tongue. They've come to Greensboro and talk, because they can break down sometimes our planner talk into more understandable common language and help folks, give them power, especially on things where there are choices when they're told there aren't any. And I think that's important. I think we have to work at everybody at the table and be able to provide information to our communities and our elected officials and others, and ourselves, because there are things we don't know everything. We learn about what we need to do. So I think I see them as a value asset, as an add-on. It's not an or, it's an and. Are you going to do this to me some more? I'm just asking. I thought you were nice.
So while we're talking about advocacy, much talking about citizen engagement, what do you see the role as planners of planners being with like anti-housing advocacy? Like we have a big problem, especially in California up here too. We have a lot of big needs. So what do you see our role being?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. On the anti-housing advocacy, is that what I heard you say? So one of the things as we go into this next level of the Housing Supply Accelerator, I was interviewed and they asked me, what is a big piece of this? And my concern is not, I think we could come up with great, zoning districts and maybe even building techniques that can build more houses and more spaces. But I can organize a neighborhood like that. All I have to put is a rezoning sign up, public hearing notice that there's going to be a multifamily development in that community, and all of a sudden people who hadn't spoken to each other are now each other's best friends. And if I had more time, I'd tell you about the 8-unit townhouse infill development that apparently is going to just create more havoc and mayhem. I think there's a couple of things. I think one, we have to work on our education pieces. We have allowed things to get away too far. The separation of uses, the separation of densities we're our profession's to blame in part for this. We've allowed it to get, we're trying to pull it back. So we have to educate, what are those people's fears when they're anti? You're gonna impact my housing values. Okay, are we? Well, then let's get the study together to prove what it does. What is the impact on housing values in the community if this type of project comes here? What are the projects? The biggest thing I've discovered is people aren't worried about the housing type, they're worried about who's gonna live there. And that's code. We know it's code, and we just count on our council to call that out. That yes, it is infuriating that it is 2025 and we still have those kinds of conversations. But I think we have to listen to what people are really afraid of and be able to address those, because I get it. Your home is your biggest personal investment, right? So that feels like that might be threatened. So let's address what those fears are and see if we can't come up. And that's part of what the next study of this Housing Supply Accelerator group is going to look at, is how do we educate and move these things forward without vilifying the people who are protesting or afraid. Find out what they're really afraid of and let's address it. Let's work through it together.